So this is a big, big topic. And I know it's a webinar, so some of you are going to be sort of tuned in, sort of not tuned in because you got other stuff going on in the background. And, I get it. You're also going to know that a lot of this stuff, this content is going to be stuff that you have seen before, potentially, depending on if you're using an operating system, until like the last 20 minutes. And then you might not have seen a lot of this stuff. So, we're a long time, we were longtime EOS implementers. And we respect that system. We brought a lot of that stuff with us, but there's a lot of changes that we've also brought to it as a consulting company that we think are really important. So hopefully you hang on to the end, because a lot of the gold, some of the beginning stuff, you might be like, oh, we know all that. But some of the end stuff, you might say, yeah, we did not know that. Or at least we've not used it like that. Let me see if I can get all of you on my screen. We have 40 some people here. Okay, try my best. You can stop me anytime, ask me any questions that you want, but I'm going to get rolling. I got my watch here. Kristen's mentally yelling at me in my head, telling me to make sure I get done on time and that I stay on track. So I want to make sure I do that. And I do want to thank, just in advance, our content team and our marketing team, which is Nicolette, who's on the phone, and Kristen Sweeney, who does all of our content. People love our content. You can thank Kristen for that. Her and her company put that together. I'm really happy how they do on all these decks. You can see I don't do them. I work with them on the content, but they do a fantastic job. So thanks to my team for showing up and doing a great job as always. So the role map is how to structure your company and plan for the future. And as I go through this, I'm going to tell you that this is, we run multiple companies. We've owned multiple businesses, had a lot of success with our businesses. This is probably one of the tools that we use the most in the business. Probably by far, honestly. So if I had to attribute my success, my team's success, my leadership team's success to a few tools, this would be one of the top. And like I said, please hang around till the end, because I want you to hear the philosophy of which we approach it, because that's where we tend to veer off from just the basics. So just a brief stuff about me. I know a lot of you here, some of you I don't know. Our mission is to help, our company's mission, the Cruise Consulting Group, is to help entrepreneurs and their teams live their ideal lives. Leadership teams and and the people that own these businesses, we're very close to all those people. We work with almost 100 companies. I think we're in the mid 90s right now. We're getting ready to celebrate crossing the 100 mark. Close to 400 to 500 leadership team members. And all we care about is that they get out of their business, that you all get out of your business what you're trying to get out of it. If that's massive growth, we're going to go for that. If that's smiling, we're going to go for that. If it's profitability, we're going to go for that. Given our own mindset, if you say, well, you tell me what I should be thinking about, we tend to focus on revenue growth, profitability increase, both gross profit and net profit, and the overall enterprise saleable value of your business. That's what our team is charged with internally. That's what we measure on a quarterly basis and how our clients are doing. Our target market is small businesses. We like to start with a company generally when they're between $2 million and $40 million. That's where we start with them. And our goal is to get them to grow most of the time from either a small business to a bigger small business, or from a small business to a medium-sized business. Our value proposition is threefold. We do have our own operating system. It's a proprietary operating system. It's called the Growth System. I'm not going to go over it today in detail. We focus on operations, people, strategy, and finance in that system. So we do have our own system, much like an EOS or a scaling up. We have that system. Where we tend to veer off is that we are a consulting company. So we do hold ourselves accountable to the success of our businesses. We're constantly scrumming internally, making sure our businesses are healthy. We watch all our numbers internally. We are big on accountability for our company's successes. And then we have resources. We have a lot of our own internal resources, from our own finance company to our recruiting resources, our content resources, our M&A resources, our wealth management resources. Thank you, Derek. If you have strong wealth management needs, I'll give a shout out to Derek, our wealth management partner, who's in the audience. If you have wealth management needs, he's the person for that. He works with a lot of our exited companies. He works with a lot of our current companies to make sure their finances stay on straight. So our goal really is to build all the resources that our small businesses need, because honestly, we are small business owners ourselves. So about me, like I said, you know me, I am a lifetime entrepreneur and business consultant. I come from, very strangely, 3 generations of entrepreneurs on both sides of my family, which is extremely odd. But everybody I knew for 3 generations of my family was an entrepreneur in some way, fashion, or another. I am the president and founder of the Cruise Consulting Group, CE Painting, and Collegiate Entrepreneurs, which I finally get to say I officially sold after owning it for 22 years last week. So Collegiate Entrepreneurs is a company that teaches college students how to run businesses for the summer. We taught them how to run painting businesses. We had over 12,000 employees in the time that I owned it. And it was crazy, just in thousands of branch managers, hundreds of executives worked for that company. And then eventually I sold it after so many years to one of my longtime general managers. And I'm really excited for his future. We also own a commercial painting company that almost broke the Inc. 500 last year. We hit about 540. We also own Cruise Consulting Group, and we also own a separate finance company that has CFOs, controllers, and bookkeepers to help our clients with their needs with those things. So 3 of our companies have made the Inc. 5000. Like I said, CE Painting almost broke the Inc. 500. So we have a lot of success in our businesses. I'm surrounded by a lot of people. If you know them, you can attest to this, a lot of people who are a whole lot smarter than I am. Okay, so today for the role map, like I said, we're going to start basic, and then we're going to get a little more into nuance, which is where we think the gold lies. So we're going to talk about why traditional org charts don't work. We're going to introduce our role map concept, and we're going to show you how we use the role map to build out our hiring plan, which is kind of ultimately the tactical place this all ends up. So we're going to start with a quick poll. Nicolette, you want to roll with that? Okay, so you'll see a poll in front of you. Please click on this. How useful is your org chart? If you don't have one, go there. Yeah. Okay, there we go. There, we're voting now. We don't have one. We have one. We barely look at it. We have one. We use it regularly at all levels of the business. Oh, we got a tie going between we have one. We rarely look at it. It's like watching a horse race. Some of you are using it all the time. 39%, 42%. Rarely look at it. What's going to win? Rarely look at it. It's coming up hot. 45%, 43%. Rarely look at it. Wins by a small margin, but pretty good. Some of you are using it regularly. That's exciting. That's good to know. That is really good to know. I'll tell you that in the many years we use this, it's one of the biggest questions that I got, especially when I was working with as an EOS implementer, was how do we use this thing? So we've really given that a lot of thought, and hopefully get some tactical tips out of this today. Okay. So org charts as a whole are just boring. A traditional org chart, generally in how it's viewed for most companies, is unhelpful. For most companies, it is generally looked at as being a slotting tool for what do we have, what should they be doing, and it's generally not helpful. Now, granted, if you're running a $50 to $100 million company, you're probably nailing this function, but most small businesses are desperately not nailing this function. It's usually on board and introduced to employees in onboarding, and then it's stuffed in a drawer. Most employees in any company under $50 million have no idea what the org chart looks like. Maybe in their own world they do. Most do not. The general approach for a typical org chart is who does what. That's really what it asks. Who do we have and what do they do? It's structured around your people and who they report to, which you might think, well, that makes sense. Isn't that what you want to know in an org chart? I'm going to tell you, yes, that's helpful to know. So it's not like org charts are dumb and, we're being a little dramatic here to make a point. Org charts certainly have their own value, and they've helped businesses for many years. But I would tell you the philosophy that we're talking to you about today is basically the opposite of what they're typically used for. Now, this is a huge concept. So if you're a client of ours or you've seen our webinars in the past, you've heard me say one of our guiding principles in our company are that people are 90% of your success. And that's true. Even in a product company, we work with some big product companies, I'm going to say that people are still a big part of your success because they're still supporting the product, inventing the product, and iterating the product. But in the service business, You are only your people, honestly. That's all you are. That being the case, they still shouldn't drive how you set up your org chart. And this is where most companies go wrong. Now, if you're an EOS company, maybe a scaling up company potentially too, you've learned some of these skills, so it's not new to you. If you're not one of those companies, you probably haven't. So people should not drive your org chart. So what does? So here's the problem with traditional org charts. They're often structured around individuals. They're usually broken down by management structure, and they tend to show hierarchy because they're big into hierarchy. There tends to be minimal, if any, accountability or clarity as to who actually owns what, other than the name of the seat. Okay, that's usually all you get. Once again, helpful for organization and mindset, not really for accountability. It also doesn't usually account for one person wearing multiple hats in different areas. So you'll see, I'll go into companies and I'll say, what's your job? A company that uses an org chart typically will say, I am the head of marketing. Now, a small business, I'm also the head of marketing. I'm also the head of sales. I'm also the head of content. Okay, but that's not known in a typical org chart. It's kind of just saying, here's my title and here's what I do basically. And we're really saying that's no bueno. Now, I want to remind you once again, a lot of this, if you're an EOS company or a scaling up company, a lot of this is still the basics. We're going to move beyond this pretty soon. But I want to make sure for those of you that do not know this basic stuff, I still want to make sure you get the basics. So solution, build a better org chart. As I said, we aren't the first ones to do this. We stand on the seat of giants, like probably many of you do in your careers, scaling up. Scaling up is one of the really scaling up is really the father or the mother of all operating systems, started by a guy named Vern Harnish, who happened to also be the founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which I'm a longtime member of. He has this thing called the functional accountability chart, and he also has this thing called the process accountability chart. So good stuff in there. If you're a scaling up person right now and using scaling up, you've seen some of this stuff. If you're using EOS is a very simple system. They pride themselves on their simplicity, if that's a word. And they use the accountability chart. There's a lot of gold in that concept that EOS has nailed. That accountability chart is gold. If you're an EOSer and you're using accountability chart and you're loving your EOS model, we might give you a few extra things to carry that EOS thing forward. But EOS, scaling up, both great systems, and they had a lot of these concepts. And then for us, we evolved it. We are a consulting company. We took those concepts that we've learned and we evolved into what we call the role map. And we'll talk about how that looks a little bit different in just a minute. That person on the right, she's very excited about this, like we all are. So, poll, have you used a scaling up, EOS, or growth tool or role map to build your org chart? Here we go, off to the races. I've never seen these tools before. What's winning? I have an org chart based on one of these tools, coming in hot, 50%, 60%, 60, 56%, 59%, 59%, 56%, 22%. Heard these tools, not using them. 45, just about an even split. 45% of you either have not used it or have heard of it, but are not using it. 53% have used it. Oh, pretty even split. Some of you are using this to some degree. Okay. Notice that we have a lot of our consultants here as well, because I'm not even convinced that some of our consultants are even nailing this. So hopefully we can all learn some stuff here and make sure we're using this, whether you're using these systems or using our system, you're taking it to the next level of whatever you're using. So how's the role map work? Like all the other systems, we approach it with a structure first. What role does the business need? Now, once again, standing on the shoulders of some giants in my long term with EOS and all the stuff that we learned there, it's one of the things I credit that organization with teaching me to ask that question: what role does the business need? This is very hard to shift this mindset. Poor Kristen, I think she's still here. She's been inundated with this question for me. She's heard it 1,000 times. I'm constantly talking about what the business needs. Marshall, our COO, even my team, we're constantly talking about what does our business need. basically, that's where we want you to start. What most people do is they start with, who do we have? What should they be doing? We're saying, that's not good. It's not good. Don't do that. So our objectives with our role map are to build the right structure for the company, define a clear function and clear ownership for each role, put the right people in each role, and then we start to evolve. Okay, so we want to connect those role descriptions to other company activities, such as evaluating job performance and hitting scorecard metrics. And we want to think about these last two are things that really we've had to add fire on, to add some juice to these tools so that we can use them to scale our companies for massive growth. So the last two are things that we've really tried to add in ourselves. Scaling up does some of that, part of this to some degree. The last thing is to think about how your structure can be leveraged and changed over the coming years. And we talk about that constantly. So one of the things I want you to take out of this webinar is that we're using our role map on a constant iterative basis in our companies. Okay. Our companies tend to look at it and say, the role map says this, what is it evolving to? And when is it evolving to that? And how does that link to X, Y, Z? And I'm going to show you how they do that in just a minute. So let's talk about the basics first. Building the role map. Once again, some of this is just the basic, we do the same thing in many systems. A few ground rules. Once again, if you're using these other systems, you've heard these before. Each role is considered a seat. Each role is considered a seat in the role map. So a box is considered a role for us. Only one person can sit in a seat. Pretty basic stuff. Now, if you have a team of account managers or laborers or tech people, you can certainly have 6 or 7 or 8 or even 10 of the same roles in your company. But those people need to be very clearly focused on still their own area. So this is really saying only one person can be responsible for one role. And that's true. And that's really important. You'll notice if you work with any of our consultants, anytime anybody says anything like, well, we own this and I own it, we say, wrong, no bueno, fix it. Only one person can sit in each seat. One person can and often does in any company under 10 to 15 million. If that's any of you, almost 0% chance if you're under 10 million bucks that you don't have at least 2 people. Oh boy, someone got really excited or the dog ran out, something happened there. One person can sit in more than one seat. One person is often sitting in multiple seats in companies that are that size. A seat also does not indicate full-time. And a lot of these seats you may discover are not meant to be full-time. You may call out, we have multiple seats in our company that are a few hours, we think a few hours a week. And then some of those seats are extremely valuable, but we're calling them out as separate seats. This is not mentioned in the presentation, so I'm going to mention it now. Sometimes we'll call a role, a separate role, even though it's only 4 or 5 hours a week, we'll call it as a separate box. 1, to make sure it's clear that that's a separate role. 2, because oftentimes we'll do that because we think that role might evolve into something bigger. So we'll pull it out to give it a piece of real estate somewhere where it can eventually become a bigger seat, but we know that that's there. Now, this is very important because this gets into time stamping. We're really big into time stamping our role maps. For the very first iteration of a role map, okay, so we can do all of this for you, obviously. If you don't have a company you're doing it with right now, or you want to have somebody, we do all this. My team always reminds me, they always say, at least try and sell something in the damn webinar, Eric, and I always forget to do it. So we can do all this. You want to hire somebody to do this for you, we can do all this for you. You want to do it on your own, that's awesome too. We'll help you for free. So the first iteration, whether you're doing this on your own or whether you're working with us, this was always very fuzzy to me. But it's very important that the first iteration of your role map you use to document your current state that's going to get you to survive at least like 3, 4, 5 months. 6 months, 12 months is fine. I would just say, just document what you got. Document, as long as what you got is going to last at least like a month or 2. If it's not going to last at least a month or 2, then you can still do it, but you're just going to change it again in a month, which is fine. But you got to pick your stasis ground. You got to pick you got to do a level set one first, even if it's crap, even if you're like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Look at my mess of a company here. Just document it first so that Nicolay, you might want to try and put everybody on mute for now. Thanks. No worries, though. I love when everybody's not on mute participation. But just document it first. Just get it out there, get it documented, and say, okay, we can live with this for a month or two. That gives you your board game. Now your game is set up. And then you're going to see, once again, like every other company in the world, there are really 5 key seats. You know, I break it down like my coach does. I work with Mark Moses, longtime friend of mine. He CEO Coaching International. We believe that basically the role at the top of the company is the CEO. If you're an EOSer, you might call it the visionary. We think it's more of a CEO role. You then have a president role, or a COO, or a GM, or an integrator if you're an EOS company. But you're going to likely have some split amongst those 2 roles at the top of your role map up there. You're going to have a CEO, a visionary type person, and then you're going to have a president. Now, there is, and you've seen this dotted line potentially in another system. There are some companies that don't require that. Okay, so if you're a company that's CEO heavy, like tech companies they really need CEOs often because the vision is changing so quickly. A lot of education companies, but some nuts and bolts companies. We have a commercial painting company, pretty sizable. I'm the president of the company. I'm also the CEO. Is my CEO role that valuable? Not really, honestly. It sort of is, but my president role is really valuable. It's a commodity business. The CEO role is not as valuable. President role is. So most companies have a CEO. Some companies have a CEO and a president combined, but that split, you have to figure out if you're going to need that or not. And I'll show you what those roles look like more in a minute. You then have to have success. So this little stupid chart, if you bring me into the organization, just me personally, and you say, Eric, you got 1 hour to solve our problems, I'm going to use this as my cheat sheet. So this is my cheat sheet. This is like consultant cheat sheet 101. 1, do we have an extremely strong function in sales and marketing? Is that role, are there people in that role that are good? Are there people that are running the company operations that are good? And there are people that are really good in finance. Generally speaking, if I can answer and see where there's strength in the roles in these at least 4 or 5 boxes, the company can do well. If I don't see strength in those boxes, generally speaking, the success of the company goes right along with it. And it's usually not good. So we work with a company, we'll spend the first year, sometimes 2 years, just trying to fill in these seats. Now, they don't always look like expensive seats by any stretch. It could be, a head supervisor is in charge of operations, where the sales and marketing is actually an external marketing firm. But we just need to have strength in those 3 roles, or we're not going to have incoming leads to get us more business, sales and marketing. We're not going to have extremely good product or service operations, and we're not going to know if we're making money, finance. Okay. So we got to have strength in those 3, and then someone's got to really run the company who's got to be good at running the business, and that's your president. Let's dive into more what that means. So then in our role map, if you're using the FACE or the accountability chart, we want to start giving those things key accountabilities. So how you do this is pretty basic. We just look at every box and every role and say, what is this person accountable for? Now, remember, there's no names here yet. We're starting at the senior level first. We're asking, what do we need to have in the senior level of the company? Okay. Senior level is relative. For a $2 million company, senior level may look a lot different than a $10 million company, but it's still senior level. It's management. So what does this level look like? We start with that level first, and we make sure that all the key responsibilities of the business are outlined. So you can see in this case, the CEO owns company vision, culture, key relationships. The president we use objectives and key results in our system. They own making sure that at least 80% of the OKRs happen on a quarterly basis. They own making sure the scorecard is on track. They own making sure that people are hired and the right people in the right seats. President runs the business, and I like to sum that up of 80% OKR completion and scorecard green. Like, that's how I sum it up. If you're a good president, that's happening. If you don't know what OKRs are, you missed a previous webinar, objectives and key results. If you're using Rocks or whatever else you're using, it's the same basic thing. Sales and marketing, key accountabilities, hitting revenue targets, hitting leads funnel targets, doing the marketing calendar, operations, hitting service delivery targets, managing contract negotiations, hitting client retention targets, finance, 3-year and annual budgeting, monthly reporting, monthly forecasting. You might also see hitting the P&L to be under the president. But basically, we're trying to figure out what are the key accountabilities we want to have at the top of our company and senior leadership. And then once we get this figured out, we say who owns what. Now everybody knows what they're accountable for. Then we start building it in every other level of the business, which I'm going to start doing. So generally speaking, you can pull those accountabilities out from the results you want these people to get, any process they might own, and any KPIs that they might hit. So when people are struggling to figure out what the accountabilities are, I say, well, what are the KPIs they own? What processes do they own? What results are they trying to hit? And I can usually build these bullets out pretty quickly. Now, once the whole company has this, everybody now knows what they're accountable for. And it's very, very, very clear. Notice bullet number 1, management's always a given. If you have people reporting into you, we have a bunch of tools for this, we're going to assume you know how to manage. If you don't, we're going to address that. So anybody that has people reporting into them, you have to be a good manager on top of everything else. Okay, so I could credit all kinds of people for this one because all kinds of companies use different versions of this. But some of you may not have seen this because it's not a formal version of any of the companies actually. But I'm going to credit Bay State Therapy for this. So if you want to get therapy, and they're very excited right now because I have a broken leg and I don't have to get physical therapy from them now. I'm going to learn all about what they do for God knows how long. But Bay State is an amazing company, client of ours that showed me this thing that came out one day and they said physician agreement, and they showed me this thing and I said that is incredible. And what they basically did was they took they were an EOS company. So they took their accountability chart and they said, Eric, here's how we broke this down. So they took, I'm gonna show you an example in a second. They took the position, they put it at the top. They put the key accountabilities right from the role map, just copied them right over there. They took the scorecard measurables as well as the metrics that need to be hit. And then, and we think this is really important, they identified the key processes that each person has to own in the business. Yes, I know some of you don't have this documented. If you're working with us, you have to do that. You know, we have a partner that does that for you too, if you want somebody to do that for you, but you got to nail the processes because that's actually what they do all day. It's really important that we nail processes, but we get this thing mapped out for every position, every one of those roles in the company. So if you're a first-year client of us, you probably have not started doing this yet. If you're a first-year growth client, in your second year, you will. And we're getting ready to publish our leadership manuals in the next week or two, I think. You're going to get all these things. If you're a client of ours, you're going to get all this stuff in your leadership manual. If you have a person that sits in 5 seats, they're going to need 5 of these things because they sit in 5 seats. Whether it's smart or not is not really relevant. This is the position agreement for the seat. They then sign each one of them, and now they have 100% clarity on what they own in the business. This is their job. And their managers know, I know what they're accountable for. I know what numbers they need to hit. And I know what processes they need to own that I need to train them on. Now, it's a big word, training. Not going to talk about that today. Plus, it makes some of you cringe, including me. But you got to have an incredible training process in your company if you're going to be really good at doing what you do. But this allows us to start with where all that's going. Here's one filled out. Once again, get your, I'm like a billboard today, get your physical therapy at Bay State because this is their idea. Director of sales and marketing, accountabilities, right from the role map, manage your sales and marketing teams, sales and marketing plan, new business development, lead gen, content development, scorecard measurables and metrics. They're responsible for the number of leads. This person owns 2 per week. This will obviously evolve as the company grows. 1 marketing event per month, conversion rate 50% or better, and 1 referral request per week. Pretty simple. This is a huge strategy component inside this particular company, as you can see. If we can nail this bucket right there, we're going to grow our business. And now we know who owns it. The processes they own: event planning, sales, content development, and cross-selling. This, by the way, is a mock company. All kudos to Kristen and Nicolette for doing this. Nobody, it's funny. I always ask all of you, can you please share some of your stuff? You always say, we don't really want to share it, Eric. And then I realize I don't want to share mine either. So they make mock stuff. Some clients can see our stuff if you want to see it. This is the one we made up. Note this very important asterisk at the bottom. if the employee needs to create the processes. So you can still identify a process and then realize, oh yeah, we don't have that yet. That's okay. Just write the process in there. We have all these templates, by the way, emails, we'll send them to you. Write the process in there anyway and just say, and then just put a note, needs to be written. I'd rather have you do that than just say, just go out and sell crap. That doesn't really work very well. It's also not scalable. If this is a really important thing, if your company's not heavy on process, no matter what you tell yourself, you are not a scalable business. You are not. You're likely growing by heroics. Okay. Then we want to build it out for the entire organization. So I told you we're going to see some stuff that not everybody really focuses on a lot. Position agreement's one of them. There's another thing coming right now in just a minute. So you're going to build it for the entire organization. Keep thinking in terms of seats, not people. Seats, same rules in the lower levels of the business. You're going to build all the way to the front lines. So many times people say they stop in the first 2 or 3 levels down, because even in our company, we got to be careful. We tend to be leadership team centric, and that's a major problem. So in our company, we have entire consultants that are designed just to get this system in the entire rest of the company, because it's so important to get it down to it's the lowest person organization. I hate calling them that because I think they're the most important, but it's down to people that are in the front lines. So build all the way to the front lines. And if you can't, now this is where it gets tough. People are like, well, I can't identify what their accountabilities are. I hear that a lot. And I always say, look, give it an hour. They need to know what their KPIs are, even if it's apple picking or if it's number of patients they need to work on for PT. Baystate Physical Therapy does visits per hour, I think, something like that for the therapist. And I think like comments or CSAT or something, but they are using these KPIs that even at the front line, every single person knows them and everybody has a position agreement. Everybody, bottom up and top down. So don't skip it. Now here's an example of a sample role map. You'll notice that eventually we made it, 2/3 through this webinar. We haven't even talked about names yet. The names made it. It's not in this webinar, but I will tell you, we use a tool called the VDR tool to make sure we know who to put in those seats. 1, do they live the core values of the company? 2, do they have the desire to really want to do their job? And 3, we think it's pretty important. Do you think they can actually get the results the job requires? So they have to pass the VDR test. So if they pass the VDR test, you put them in these boxes. Now you got a full role map. Notice this one's broken down by senior leaders, directors, and frontline. Notice over there, big deviation from us and other systems, we date all of our role maps. And I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. Everything we do is dated. So we think this one is a likely effective through 12/31. It doesn't mean it won't go longer, but we think it's kind of like a gallon of milk. These things expire. So people say, well, how do I use this thing? I say, I'm going to give you more detail in just a few minutes. You're going to look at this thing mentally as a constantly evolving thing that's actually going to be the way you grow your business. So anytime there's major changes in your role map, I'm going to recommend you make another one and change the effective date. And I'll show you how companies do that in just a minute. This brings it to life for you, and this is how you really, truly grow your business. Another poll, here it goes. What does your hiring plan look like? We're in the home stretch, by the way. What does your hiring plan look like? Okay, what's that? We don't have one. We know we want to make some hires in the next 12 months. We have our hires next 3 years mapped into our company budget. We know we want to make some hires next 12 months, make some hires next 12 months, coming in hot. Nobody has any idea what next 3 years look like at all. They look like hope and dreams and desires and prayers. We want to make some hires over the next 12 months. Okay, well, we got 12 months of life in all of us. The rest of us at 13 months, we are dead. Okay, well, hey, we got something. That's good. So all of you are apparently normal. That is what is very common, to have it planned out for the next 12 months. Interesting. Here's what's interesting. Okay, so if you're using our system, and I challenge you, if you're using EOS, great system, using Scaling Up, great system, I'm going to challenge you to live more into thinking about the 3 years than the 1. You're going to be like, that's stupid. Well, In our company, we trying to focus more on the 3 years than we do on the one. Why? Because the 1 year is just a part of the 3 year vision, really. It's really, well, 1 year is like a tack. It's like, I mean, I'm 51. 1 year is like tomorrow. That's a set of tactics, really. That's really all it is. If you're only thinking 12 months in advance, you're literally tactically thinking about your company. You are not thinking about your company strategically. You are also not going to 2 or 3x the next 4 or 5 years. You just won't. And ideally, we're shooting to help you at least double every 3 years, if that's what your goal is. And some companies much more. And how do you do that? You think bigger and you think past the 1 year and you get out of the tactical. And the roadmap is meant to help you do that. So the roadmap is not just a tool to describe the current state or near term, even 6 to 12 months. It is used to build a hiring plan for your future. It connects to other tools like your 3-year objectives or your 3-year, oh man, my EOS terms are escaping me. I think we just called the vision in the EOS. I'm not sure what Scaling Up calls it, but you're basically, it's your 3-year plan. So for us, the roadmap has to connect to your 3-year objectives and your 3-year budget. Now we're starting to put some gas on this, okay? You're starting to, this is how you connect the dots towards really growing your company fast. So let's look at iteration. All right, now, if you're a client of ours in specific, iteration is a big thing for us. It's how do we continually iterate the business to the next level? We're constantly talking about that, okay? We're big believers in failing upwards. If you work with us, you know, you're going to take chances. You're going to roll dice. We're going to try and make sure you never, you know, bet more than you've got and you never bet more than you're comfortable with, but you're constantly trying to push in an upward direction and failing upward, basically. So here's an example. Thank you. They're not here, by the way, today. This is a large company we work with. They were willing to share it, and we changed every single name and every single function. But this is the truth. This is a true example of a business we work with. So you'll notice that version. Oh man, I don't think anybody knows this company, but I'll tell you they're very large. Okay, and they are the best people. And they are. I wish they were here. They'd be laughing right now. These people are incredibly smart. This company is built organically. It is, let's just call it in the many hundreds of millions of dollars now, built from scratch by one person. However, when they built it from scratch. They did through acquisitions. They did bolt-ons, you know, extremely aggressive, really good. But they hired us and they said, you know, Eric, we think we're kind of a mess. We're not sure, but it kind of feels like that. So I said, well, let's just document what you got first. God love them. This is their actual structure right now. And we pinned it for 6 months. We said, let's live it for a year. So we had in that room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12. I think we actually had 16 people in our first meeting, all senior leadership in some way or another, all extremely senior. We couldn't even figure out who the top levels were. And they were all reporting to one person, actually 2 people. And the stress level was maxed out. And people and the organization wasn't getting leveraged. We're still working on it, but it wasn't getting leveraged the way they wanted to lever it. So because everything was so buried and kind of mixed up, and we've been trying to unwind it. So the first thing we decided was, let's document where we are steady state. And this one we said, this will get us through 2021. Now we built these 2 next slides. I'm going to show you. We built these from really from in the first 3 months. Okay. So here's the next version, which we think is going to survive until the middle of this year. So once again, we built this thing 4 or 5 months ago, so maybe longer. So president, trimming down, stuff starting to slide. Why some of this stuff happening slow? Well, this is a bigger company, first of all, so things tend to take slower. A little more politics. Politics is not great, but you got to acknowledge it where it is, where it's there. You can't break organizations. You got to be careful with this stuff. Humans are really, really important people, and you got to love each other. So you got to be sensitive, but we wanted to start really kind of flattening this out and getting the buckets so we could lever it and get the right senior people in place to help their team members out. So this one is going to get us through about middle of June. And then here's where we're going to end up by, I think, actually, I think by Q3 of this year, maybe Q4. Look at the difference. You got a visionary, in this case, a CRO, a COO, a CFO, a CPO, and a CTO in Corp Dev. That's it. That's the whole company. That's where we're headed. And we said initially, because we were scared, I can't blame them. Sensitivity is important. I'm going to go over that with you in a minute. We were scared. So we said, we don't want to break this company. All amazing people, super sharp, all of them, super sharp. We didn't want to break the company, but we just knew it was structurally untenable. So because we built this out for really this 3-phase process of iteration in this company's case, by the way, we have 50 to 60 pages of these for the entire company, all broken down by date in every division of the company. All the directors did them. And they were actually worse off than we were. I was working the senior team. They're like, you think this is a mess. We're going to go internally and fix what we've got. They've been iterating their businesses internally also, putting the right leaders in place and moving things around. Because we actually planned this out 3 years in advance, we're actually going to get there a year early, in my opinion, because we had it to have as a vision. And once we had it as a vision and we started working towards it, we realized we don't need to wait 3 years for that. We get that done in 2 years. That's exactly what we're going to do. This is an example of a company who has a 5-year budget, and we mapped in all of these expenses with the CEO, with the CFO, 3 years in advance, all of them. Okay. By the way, if you're a small company, you're thinking, how the hell am I going to do that? It's not about money. It's not that hard. You can do this on Google Docs and QuickBooks. Not that hard. But this is the vision of your company as it scales through people. This company will likely double their size, is my bet, in the next 3 to 4 years. Again, and that's saying something. They are very large. And a lot of it will be because we're basically breaking into different buckets of revenue that we're going to focus on and give more clarity and accountability to, and create much clearer role maps in the business to allow them to leverage that business. Each role map should be timestamped. So here are the basics of the role map. Everything needs to be timestamped. Everything needs to be dated. In our company, I like to use Google. I'm a big Google Doc fan. I'm a Google Doc junkie. I just date them. So I'll put on here right now, 6 months, December, Q2 of 2022, Q4. We're in a rapidly evolving company. Our consulting company is rapidly evolving. So we have it all mapped out. We do in our commercial painting business too. We have 2 key hires coming on board, I think in Q2 of 2023. But we also think the key hires take 3 to 6 months to get. If you're really looking at senior people, or even really good mid-level people, a lot of you are all stressed out. You're like, I can't get great people. And I'm like, that's because you're looking at it like you need them tomorrow. Start working 3 to 6 months in advance and you'll be fine. So we're already tracking towards hires we want to get a year plus from now, because we're using these tools and we see that adding the people are going to give us gas in the engine that we need to grow. So as the business grows, its needs will change as well. Example, today your finance department might include a controller and a bookkeeper, both fractional. In 1 year, you might need to add a CFO for strategic advice and an HRC to manage compliance. You may want to also unfractionalize them at some point. In our finance company, we have fractional resources. We tell people, if you need to go over a certain number of days, you should not use us anymore. You should go bring somebody on board full time. And that's all evolution. I think we have another example in here too. Yeah, today your sales and marketing department might be owned by a head of sales, very common, who happens to be the business owner. By the way, not a problem at all. If you're sitting there saying, I'm going to build a role map, I'm going to put myself in 6 seats, you're a hero. That's awesome. Just do it. That's where you start. 1 year from now, this company will need to hire a CRO and maybe add 2 business development people. But they have that mapped out because those are the triggers, people-wise, they need to get to the next size. Key hires, and which in this case, not just the CRO is the key hire, so are the biz dev people. So then where does this go? Home stretch, promise, 10 minutes left. We'll be right on time. We're going to take your role map iterations now and ideally take those out 3 years if we can. It's not as hard as it sounds, trust me. You're going to build this out 3 years in advance. Now you're thinking big, by the way. You're actually controlling what you want to be in life. I guarantee you're going to be motivated when you do it too. It's extremely motivating to do this. It really puts you in control of your business as opposed to all of your 1 years, which was me for the first 40 some years of my life. You got to get out of that. You got to switch that to 3 years because you're just firefighting right now. You got to get that vision. You got to start working towards your vision. So build this out for 3 years. At the top first, the next level's down. So we do it through 3-year objectives also. So if you're using EOS, you're using 3-year vision, that also works too. Or using scaling up. Just make sure that that objectives list covers your key hires in there. So you can, we put them in the role map, but I also put them on our objectives list too. In 3 years, we're going to have the following key hires to drive the business, the different areas of the company, et cetera, et cetera. So your 3-year objectives include they might include building an all-engaged online in-person client community, Your role map needs to include a seat for community manager, account manager, event coordinator, similar position. So this is a great job, Nicola. This is awesome. So she's basically saying you have a 3-year objective on here. And this is fantastic. I didn't even think of this, Nicolette. Good for you. Or Kristen, whoever did this. What they're saying basically is if you have a 3-year objective or a 3-year vision that says you want to build an engaged online and in-person client community with forums, meetups, and a regular event schedule, a lot of times people say that never turns into reality. People are like, my 3-year never happens. That's because you didn't map the hires you needed to get you there. So the trigger for that was the people. So in this case, if that's the thing, what does your role map need to look like to make that happen? Because if you don't do that, it's not going to happen. Like if I didn't have my team, we wouldn't even be sitting here. I'd be like, I'm going to build a webinar, and that shit's never going to happen, right? So you got to have to figure out what seats you have that are going to trigger you to do the things that you're trying to do. So determine when you're going to work on the objective 1 year from now. 2, once again, just like it was set up there. If you're figure out where these are. So you think, well, like I want to make our objective list is huge. So for me to achieve that, I got to figure out what's year 1 look like. What are the hires in year 1? What are year 2? So you got to work backwards from your objectives. Okay, home stretch. So we think one of the other biggest tools that you have to have is a 3-year budget. Now, if you're a $15, $20 million company, you need a 5-year budget, but I'll take 3. Your 3-year budget accounts for the hires you want to make and when, and it'll show the financial impact of making a key hire, and it will act as a reality check. Financial projections should be believable in terms of revenue and profit. You should be looking at your hires and saying a couple of things. 1, can I afford them? I'm going to recommend that you usually think that you should be able to afford them if they're going to make your business grow. And 2, what is the impact they're going to give us? I'm going to tell you, this is hard. I spend way more of my life than I probably even should thinking about these questions. Who are the key hires we need? How am I going to afford them? And if I don't make those key hires, am I actually going to be able to do what I want to do with the business? The answer usually is no. So then it's, okay, well, how am I going to afford it? And when does it come on board? And then I work backwards and say, when should I start looking for these people? Any key hire in our company, we're looking for 4 to 5, 6 months in advance, every single one of them. We're looking for some key hires right now. It also may show you that sometimes you need to hold off. Marshall, our COO, I don't think Marshall's here. He will tell me, Eric, no, it's too much. Like we can't afford $600,000-$700,000 in seats in the next 2 years. It's too much. We're not funded. If you're funded, I'll say you should do it. It's just too much. Or if you're a small bit, and these numbers can translate. So if you say I need $150,000 of hires, same question. So sometimes we'll say we can go fractional. Or if you're if you're a real small business, you might say part-time. Part-time is often a great way to go. Fractional is a good way to go. So now here's some of the challenges. Okay. Here's what can go wrong. It's funny. I love to sit in on your companies to see how you do it. I'd often always wish that you guys could sit in on our companies to see how we do it. Some of the things you'd look at and say, how do they do that? Because we do some weird stuff. And I'll tell you what we do in a minute. If you're not careful with your role map, you can alienate your team. That's one problem. Because your role map often, especially in senior cases, often your company is evolving, which means not everybody's going to be around for that whole journey. And that includes like me. I've already largely stepped out of running the company. I'm now on different seats in the business. I just can't do it. Like it's just not my thing. So you can't alienate people though, because as your company evolves, the general rule of thumb is that good people are going to find a better home. That's the way it works. So I've never seen that not be the case. I have seen it be the case where sometimes they find a good home in another company. I have seen that, but people always land up if their role map is evolving into people's senior level. But you got to be careful not to alienate your team because you have great team members and you want to be careful of that. And it's not about them it's not like punitive. It's not like you can't do the job anymore. It's never that. It's we need to bring this person in for this next seat. You're going to get training on X, Y, and Z. Maybe they become the next big thing at some point. Maybe they will evolve into some of these jobs, but this is where trust is really important. I tend to be relatively good at this, not always great. I make mistakes, that is for sure. But high trust is really important. And you can also get in trouble because you can dream too big. Almost on the last slide here. Number 1 is avoid alienating your team. The role map is a crucial but sensitive topic. If you're doing a lot of shifting, it can shift organizations and cause turnover right away if you're not careful. Once you build the right structure, you realize you're the right people in the right seats. That just happens. Accountability, however, increases quickly. Start putting these tools in place, your accountability increases. You start moving people out, or you move them on inside your business or someplace else is what happens. So then this also happens to senior leaders as they continue to iterate, as you just heard. And eventually you start to need been there, done that leaders in the company. But once again, oftentimes people that have been there with you so far, sometimes they can become that. Sometimes they'll stay in your business and benefit from you bringing on that been there, done that leader that you need. Your current team is still extremely valuable. I've always been very passionate about that. And especially in my team, I'm actually oftentimes more passionate about my current team than about the future team, because although I always want to grow, that's a big priority for us. I know I'm going to do what I already have is really good. And I never want to break that. So I'm having these sensitive conversations constantly. And like I said, most people have a place where you're doing what you're amazing at. And if you don't handle it sensitively, they will leave you. They're going to be like, oh, you just care about growing. You don't care about me. And if that's the truth, then they probably should leave you, honestly. But if you're sensitive about this, and I will tell you, and this always surprises people, I have 80% of these conversations, maybe even 90%, usually in front of the whole team or in front of people who it affects individually, very openly, usually way in advance. Sometimes I'll say, I'm not sure you can do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they'll prove me wrong. And sometimes they'll say, I was thinking the same thing. But it's always a conversation, because either they leave and you weren't expecting it, or I replace them and they weren't expecting that. I don't think that either of those are usually fair ways to handle a business. So you got to be super sensitive, but we generally try and be as transparent as we can be. I'm not perfect, but we try. Last slide. Avoid dreaming too big. This is the flip side of all this. Okay. This is, once again, for all levels of your business, whether you're a $1 million business or whether you're a $10 million business or a $100 million business right now. If you're not careful, you can end up creating the ideal organization where every seat is filled. You have fully built out teams in every department, but this may not be where you really need to be. So I'm going to end on these last couple of bullets and tell you that the role map, you've heard right people, right seats. For us, our bullets for our role map are right people, right seats at the right time. So if you're a client of ours, it's RP, RS, RT. So we need the right people, the right seats at the right time. My COO gave me a really huge compliment 6 months ago. He said, Eric, you are phenomenally good at growing $4 to $5 million companies pretty quickly. I don't think that's actually true, but I tend to be relatively good at it. Why is that? Because I'm pretty good at identifying what seats they need up to $4 to $5 million pretty quickly. It's pretty easy. After that, it starts to get a little more challenging. What's the next thing they need to do? But I firmly believe you can grow a $4 or $5 million company usually way cheaper than you think you can. You don't need to go out and blow all kinds of expensive talent. A lot of times it's a waste of money, honestly. So the key is to figure out, what do I actually need? Yes, we all need Warren Buffett or somebody else, or Ballmer to come in and run our businesses. You ain't getting them. I have some other phenomenal COOs. You're not getting them. I got some phenomenal general managers, assistant managers. You're not getting them either. So you got to think about, what can you get? Or maybe you should get those people, but you got to put a really big discerning eye on what you actually need in your business. If you hire too far ahead of where you are, you will blow your budget. Been there, done that. You want to hear horror stories? I'll share some horror stories with you. I've done it. I tend to be a dreamer. If you dream too far ahead of where your business is, you're going to blow money that you didn't need to blow. You also won't make good use of the high talent level you already have. I have people right now in my organization, some of which are here right now, that are stretching way above where I ever thought they'd be able to stretch. But that's one of the reasons, is because they have to. We haven't brought in the other talent yet, and I'm still waiting in a lot of cases because I keep watching them stretch their necks. So you don't have to necessarily say, well, I got to hire the next person because they can't do it. Sometimes your current talent will just stretch up. Don't break them, but if they can stretch, let them stretch. Sum it all up, the role map can help you build the right structure for organization, increase transparency and accountability big time for each role in your company, help you develop a hiring plan for the future, think 3 years, align company growth with your longer term goals, and that is it. 12 o'clock. Look at that. On the dot. Kristen, did you see that? All right. Anybody have any questions? Huh. No questions? We all good? If you need help with any of this and you're not a client, we'll help you anyway, even though you're not a client. You want to become a client, we'll help you. Derek Muhammad is raising his hand. Derek, you may ask your question, Derek.
All right, Eric, I'm bear with me. I'm thinking out loud here as I'm trying to frame my question. As you know, the accountability chart's been and role map has been a challenge for us. We've spent some good time together trying to figure it out. And you made a statement a few times about don't dream too big and have this all mapped out. And I just want to dig into that for a second. So I've got a pretty clear vision, and I'm the visionary, so that's good. I've got a pretty clear vision of where we want to be 3 and 5 years out. But sometimes I struggle with exactly what is the team going to look like 3 or 5 years from now. And I've been able to iterate and try things and fail fast and adapt. I guess the question would be, speak to the pros and cons of iterating and trying things and failing fast versus having the whole thing mapped out for 3 to 5 years.
Okay, it's a great question. So if we had another hour, I would have put more slides in there. It's a great question. So first of all, there are some triggers here. And I tend to look at it by revenue and complexity of size based on the dollars and what's going on in the business. So in your case, it'd be number of clients. So, or something like that. So when we look at the business, I'm looking at the key variables of the business. Okay. So for us, it's number of clients or number of consultants. So I'm looking at it and saying, okay, if it's 6 months from now, a year from now, what do we actually need to manage the business, like structurally? Who can control these pieces to guarantee customer satisfaction? So to me, I don't want to get behind that, because to me, the biggest trigger is customer satisfaction. That's the number one thing. So I have to hire ahead or plan ahead of customers being satisfied and employees being satisfied. So when I look at that vision, I look at those metrics and I say the business is a certain size. Is that a guaranteed trigger, or can we handle it? And then I'm going to ask myself, what do I need at that space? And I'm going to at least be thinking about that next hire. So if I don't need to plan out 3 years, I got to at least see the next trigger, and I got to at least see it 3 to 5 months in advance. Because usually with the seat I'm in, I'm picking hires that are 3 to 5 months out to even hire them. So, and this, Derek, in our organization, so in your case, it's, you've done a phenomenal job, actually, in my opinion, Derek, leveraging people to be very good at bigger than I would have expected you to be able to do it, honestly. You have people that are really stretching their roles. So for you in particular, I would say, ask yourself, if we bring on another 30, 40 clients at the rate you're growing clients, that could be whenever that is, does the internal structure start to break in your case? And if the answer is it might, you're gonna have to hire. You're gonna have to. You don't have the choice. So to me, the big driver in all this is customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and growth enablement would be the third one. So I tend to focus too much on growth enablement sometimes, but honestly, the trigger also in my brain becomes, when do our consultants no longer like working here? When do our customers no longer love the experience? And that's when I realized I need an account management function. Who's going to run that account management function? Is it going to be me? And then I go to time availability. How much time do I have? How much time does Kristen have, et cetera, et cetera? How much time does Marshall have? And it just becomes a matrix. And that's kind of how I do it. It's a bit of an art, but that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next hire has always been pretty clear to me. It's, what's the structure going to look like, and who are the next 5 hires going to report into, and so forth, 3 and 5 years down the line. But your comments are helpful. Thank you.
Other questions? All right. I think just about everybody hung in there for an hour. Impressive. If you're a client of ours, we're very grateful. If you're a fellow entrepreneur, not a client, good luck to you. We're all on this journey together. If you need anything at all, we're here to help. We love what we do. We're very grateful for all of you. Thanks again to my team for being so awesome. You make me look way smarter than I am. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. You want help? Info, Cruise Consulting Group. There you go, Kristen. I tried to do it. There you go. I told them. See you, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.